Breaking news! King Charles just spoke out against Prime Minister Keir Starmer in the most shocking royal statement in modern British history. The Prime Minister's response was so angry that half of his team is now planning to remove him from power, and what happened next could end the Labour government within 48 hours. If you want to see how this major event ends, hit that subscribe button right now because what I'm about to share will shock you. Here's what started this huge crisis. Yesterday afternoon at exactly 2:47 p.m., King Charles broke 70 years of royal rules during what was supposed to be a normal meeting at Buckingham Palace. His words were calm but powerful. Standing before 12 senior ministers, including Starmer himself, the king gave a speech that palace workers are calling the most political speech by a British king since the abdication crisis. The British people deserve leadership that respects the traditions and institutions that have kept this nation strong for 1,000 years, Charles said, his voice firm and steady. Recent actions by this government show a troubling lack of respect for constitutional balance. But Starmer wasn't accepting it. The Prime Minister didn't bow his head. He didn't accept the criticism with quiet dignity. Instead, witnesses say his face turned red, his jaw clenched, and his hands gripped the table so hard his knuckles turned white. Within minutes of leaving that room, Starmer did something absolutely unthinkable. At 3:15 p.m., he rushed into an emergency cabinet meeting at number 10 Downing Street. His exact words, according to 3 separate sources who were in that room, were absolutely shocking. "That unelected relic just publicly embarrassed me," Starmer shouted, pacing like a caged animal. "He thinks he can lecture me about governance, about democracy. The man inherited his job from his mother. I was elected by millions of British voters." Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner tried to calm him down, placing a hand on his shoulder. But Starmer shoved it away. "No, Angela, no more playing nice with these parasites. The monarchy costs British taxpayers £500 million a year while elderly people freeze to death. If Charles wants a constitutional crisis, I'll give him one he'll never forget." The response was swift and devastating. Within hours, the hammer fell. 3 cabinet ministers, including Transport Secretary Louise Hay, walked out of that meeting and never came back. Their resignations landed on Starmer's desk before he'd even finished his angry speech. But wait, because here's what makes this even more explosive. Sources inside that cabinet room reveal that Starmer didn't stop there. After the initial outburst, he allegedly ordered his communications director to prepare a statement that would publicly question the monarchy's importance in modern Britain. The draft statement, which was never released thanks to frantic intervention from senior advisors, reportedly contained language describing the royal family as an expensive anachronism and suggesting that democratic nations have moved beyond hereditary privilege. One cabinet member who saw the draft told The Guardian it was political suicide written in Times New Roman. The fact that Starmer even considered releasing such inflammatory language shows just how far he's willing to go. This isn't a prime minister losing his temper. This is someone who genuinely believes he can win a war against the crown. Meanwhile, British veterans who served this country with honor and distinction for decades are being denied healthcare appointments, while the government rolls out the red carpet for the King's lavish coronation celebrations at cost £250 million. Thomas Bentley, a 72-year-old Falklands War veteran from Birmingham, waited 9 months for a hip replacement that left him unable to walk. His daughter posted a heartbreaking video that's now been viewed 4.3 million times. "My father bled for this country," she said through tears. "He defended the crown, and now he can't even get basic medical care." The emotional detail is gut-wrenching. Thomas sits in his council flat looking at photos from his service days, while just 15 miles away at Windsor Castle, the king hosts garden parties serving champagne that cost £100 per bottle, while working-class Britons queue at food banks that have tripled in number since Labour took office. The royal family enjoys estates worth £18 billion that pay virtually no inheritance tax. The contrast is so stark, so morally repulsive, that even traditional Labour supporters are questioning where their party's priorities really lie. We're talking about a government that claims to represent the working class, while defending a hereditary monarchy that embodies everything wrong with British inequality. Even moderate Conservative MPs privately admit the optics are absolutely toxic for the establishment. And then there's what's happening to ordinary British pensioners right now. Margaret Collins, a 68-year-old retired nurse from Bradford who worked 42 years in the NHS, now lives on £203 per week. Her state pension barely covers rent. She's cutting pills in half to make her prescriptions last longer. She's eating one meal a day. She's choosing between heating and eating every single winter. Her story isn't unique. There are 2.1 million British pensioners living in poverty right now. These are people who built modern Britain, who paid taxes their entire working lives, who believed in a social contract that said if you work hard and play by the rules, the country will take care of you in old age. That contract has been shattered. Meanwhile, the civil list ensures the royal family never experiences financial insecurity. Prince Andrew, who was forced to step back from royal duties in disgrace, still receives security protection costing taxpayers £3 million annually. The Duke of York lives in Royal Lodge, a 30-room mansion on the Windsor estate, while Margaret Collins huddles under blankets in a damp council flat because she can't afford to turn on the heating. Where is Starmer's outrage about that? Where is his passion for the pensioners who voted Labour hoping for change? Instead, he's picking fights with the one institution that still commands respect and loyalty from millions of working-class Britons who see the monarchy as part of their national identity. But then something unprecedented happened that nobody saw coming. At 6 p.m. last evening, King Charles shattered every rule of modern constitutional monarchy. At a reception for Commonwealth ambassadors at Buckingham Palace, he delivered an 8-minute speech that palace historians are calling the most politically explosive royal address since King George VI opposed Chamberlain's appeasement of Hitler. I have watched with growing concern as institutions built over centuries face unprecedented assault, Charles declared, his voice carrying that distinctive blend of aristocratic authority and carefully measured emotion. Parliament exists to serve the British people, not to demolish the foundations upon which British democracy was built. When elected officials show contempt for constitutional tradition, they show contempt for the millions who fought and died to preserve it. The analysis of those words reveals devastating hidden meaning. Charles didn't just criticize government policy. He accused Starmer of betraying Britain itself. Palace insiders reveal that the speech was written personally by the king, not his usual speechwriters, and that he ignored desperate pleas from his advisors to tone down the language. Senior palace sources who spoke on condition of anonymity say Charles feels backed into a corner by Labour's increasingly aggressive stance toward the monarchy. The optics are absolutely catastrophic for Starmer. Here's a Labour Prime Minister who promised to unite Britain, now picking a public fight with the single most popular figure in the country. Polling shows King Charles maintains a 67% approval rating, while Starmer has plummeted to just 31%. Here's where it gets really interesting. What the mainstream media isn't telling you is that Charles's speech wasn't spontaneous either. According to constitutional experts, the king has been consulting with former prime ministers from both parties about his constitutional options. Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, and even David Cameron have reportedly been approached for private advice about how far a monarch can go in defending the crown without triggering a full constitutional crisis. The very fact that these conversations are happening reveals how serious this situation has become. We're talking about a king who's preparing for constitutional warfare. Some legal scholars suggest Charles could invoke ancient royal prerogatives that haven't been used in 300 years, including the theoretical power to dissolve Parliament. If he believes is acting against the national interest now, would he actually do that? Probably not. But the fact that such options are even being discussed in palace corridors shows how unprecedented this crisis has become. This isn't palace intrigue anymore. This is the branches of the British constitutional system on a collision course, with no clear path to resolution. The domino effect has been absolutely brutal. Within 90 minutes of Charles's speech, the pound sterling dropped to 0.3% against the dollar, wiping £47 billion from the London Stock Exchange. International investors, spooked by constitutional instability, started pulling money out of UK markets faster than during the Liz Truss meltdown. Polls show catastrophic damage across every demographic. A Survation poll released at 9 p.m. last night revealed Labour's support had collapsed from 38% to 29% in just 6 hours. That's the fastest single-day decline in polling history for a governing party. Among voters over 55, Labour's traditional base of support, the numbers were even worse, dropping to just 22%. Hashtag Defend the King was trending number 1 globally for 7 straight hours, with over 3.8 million tweets. Protests erupted across 23 British cities with crowds ranging from 500 in Norwich to 15,000 in Manchester, demanding Starmer apologise to the King. In Liverpool, a Labour stronghold for 80 years, protesters burned effigies of Starmer while chanting "God Save the King." Even celebrity Labour supporters started jumping ship. Author J.K. Rowling, who donated £1 million to Labour in 2024, tweeted, "I supported Labour to help working people, not to watch them attack British institutions. This isn't what I voted for." The international reaction has been equally damaging, with French President Macron carefully praising Britain's constitutional stability, in a statement that everyone understood as criticism of Starmer's inflammatory rhetoric. But that's not even the worst part. The economic consequences are starting to cascade in ways that could permanently damage Britain's global standing. Credit rating agency Moody's announced this morning they're reviewing Britain's sovereign debt rating due to constitutional uncertainty and political instability. That's the kind of language usually reserved for banana republics and failed states, not the United Kingdom. If Britain loses its AAA credit rating, borrowing costs for the government skyrocket, which means less money for public services, which means more austerity, which means more suffering for the working people Labour claims to represent. Business investment in the UK has already declined 14% in the third quarter, the worst drop since BR exit. Major corporations, including Shell and Unilever, are quietly exploring options to move their headquarters to more stable European markets. The City of London, the financial engine of the British economy, is watching nervously as international banks reconsider their UK operations. We're not just talking about a political crisis anymore. We're talking about economic catastrophe triggered by one man's ego inside number 10 Downing Street. The atmosphere has descended into complete panic and paranoia. Ministers are describing a prime minister who's lost control, isolated, defensive, and increasingly erratic. Chancellor Rachel Reeves was allegedly overheard in the corridor outside the cabinet room saying, "He's finished. We need to move quickly before he takes the entire party down with him." Foreign Secretary David Lammy tried to schedule an emergency call with Starmer 3 times yesterday evening, but the Prime Minister refused to take his calls. WhatsApp groups with names like Future of Labour and Cabinet Continuity are plotting the endgame. Senior MPs are circulating draft letters demanding Starmer's resignation, with some requiring just 12 more signatures to trigger a formal leadership challenge. Angela Rayner has been conspicuously absent from all government statements, refusing to defend Starmer on television or social media. Multiple cabinet sources say she's been meeting privately with MPs, taking careful notes, asking about their concerns, promising steady leadership. She's not preparing to support Starmer. She's preparing to replace him, veteran Labour MP Diane Abbott told Channel 4 News. The Prime Minister has committed political suicide, and the party needs to decide if we're going to die with him or save ourselves. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper looked visibly shaken during yesterday's question time, struggling to defend positions she clearly doesn't believe. Sources say 3 more cabinet resignations are planned for Monday morning. Time to create maximum political devastation right before Prime Minister's questions. And here's what makes the internal chaos even more explosive. Junior ministers and backbench MPs are now openly briefing against Starmer to any journalist. Who will listen? One newly elected Labour MP from a northern constituency told The Times, "I knocked on 10,000 doors to get elected. I listened to voters talk about their love for the monarchy, their pride in British tradition. And now my Prime Minister is destroying everything they believe in. I didn't sign up for this." That sentiment is being repeated across the Labour Parliamentary Party. MPs who won marginal seats are terrified of facing voters in their constituencies. Some have cancelled planned town halls because they're afraid of being shouted down by angry constituents demanding they denounce Starmer. The party's internal WhatsApp channels, normally filled with supportive messages and policy discussions, have gone completely silent. Nobody wants to defend the indefensible. Nobody wants their name attached to what increasingly looks like political suicide. One shadow cabinet member who spoke anonymously to the BBC said, "We're watching the Labour Party tear itself apart in real time, and nobody knows how to stop it." But here's the layer that could trigger the final collapse of Starmer's government. Leaked internal Labour documents obtained by the Sunday Times show something absolutely explosive. The documents, allegedly from a confidential strategy meeting 2 weeks ago, revealed that Starmer's team was actively planning a long-term campaign to reduce royal powers and potentially open a debate on abolishing the monarchy entirely by 2030. If these documents are real, and if they show what senior Labour sources claim they show, then Starmer's attack on Charles wasn't a spontaneous outburst. It was premeditated political warfare against the crown itself. Think about what that means for the millions of Britons who voted Labour, believing they supported constitutional monarchy. Think about the optics of a prime minister who lied about his intentions, who smiled and bowed before the king at his coronation while secretly plotting to destroy the institution. The documents allegedly show draft polling questions designed to test public appetite for reducing the monarchy to ceremonial status with no constitutional role, and detailed financial analyses of how to redistribute royal wealth to fund social programs. The optics of that would be absolutely devastating because it proves Charles was right. Starmer isn't just clumsy or emotional. He's executing a deliberate strategy to fundamentally reshape Britain's constitutional order without ever asking voters for permission. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage and Reform UK are capitalizing on this crisis with devastating effectiveness. While Labour implodes in chaos and recrimination, Farage stands before Union Jacks looking calm, steady, and statesmanlike. Yesterday in Essex, he delivered a speech that's being replayed across every news channel. While Keir Starmer attacks our king, Reform UK defends him. While Labour wages war on British tradition, we protect it. While they create chaos, we offer stability. For the first time in British political history, Farage isn't positioning himself as a disruptor. He's positioning himself as a defender of order against Labour radicalism. The polls tell a shocking story. Conservatives remain steady at 31%. Labour has crashed to 27%, and Reform UK has surged to an unprecedented 26%. A three-way statistical tie. In some constituencies, Reform UK is actually leading both major parties. For the first time since Reform UK's founding, betting markets show Farage has a realistic path to becoming Prime Minister, either through coalition building or if Labour's collapse accelerates into a confidence vote that triggers an early election. Farage isn't just capitalizing on Starmer's mistakes. He's offering millions of angry, confused Britons something Labour can no longer provide: certainty about who Britain is and what Britain should be. What's even more remarkable is how Farage has transformed his public image almost overnight. For years, he was dismissed as a fringe figure, a populist provocateur who could win protest votes but never actual power. Now, he's giving measured interviews on the BBC, wearing tailored suits and speaking in sober, statesman-like tones about constitutional responsibility. He's meeting with business leaders in the City of London, reassuring them about economic stability. He's reaching out to moderate Conservative MPs who are disgusted by Labour's radicalism, but don't trust their own party leadership. Behind the scenes, senior Reform UK officials are quietly building coalitions, making promises, offering cabinet positions to defectors from both major parties. This isn't the Nigel Farage of Brexit theatrics. This is a man who can smell power and is positioning himself as a steady hand Britain needs. The transformation is so complete that even his longtime critics admit he's playing this crisis brilliantly. One Conservative cabinet minister told the Financial Times, "Farage has matured into a serious political operator. If Starmer continues self-destructing, Nigel might actually pull this off." The next 72 hours are absolutely critical for Britain's future. On Monday morning, the House of Commons reconvenes for the first time since Charles's devastating speech. Starmer faces Prime Minister's questions, where Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch and Farage will absolutely eviscerate him. Sources suggest at least 6 Labour MPs may openly break ranks and criticize their own leader on the floor of Parliament. By Tuesday, 3 more cabinet resignations are expected, with rumours that Rachel Reeves might be among them, delivering the final blow. Wednesday brings a scheduled vote on the King's speech, which could become a de facto confidence vote in Starmer's leadership. If Labour MPs rebel, If even 15 vote against their own government, Starmer is finished. The question is no longer whether Starmer survives. It's how many hours he has left. Britain is watching a constitutional crisis, a government meltdown, and a political realignment unfold in real time. This crisis will be studied for decades as a moment when a Labour Prime Minister destroyed his own government by declaring war on the monarchy. At its epicenter stands Keir Starmer, who looks increasingly isolated, increasingly desperate, and increasingly finished. So here's the question that matters. Did Starmer just commit career suicide by attacking King Charles? Or could he somehow survive by doubling down on reform? And is Nigel Farage about to become the next Prime Minister of Britain? What do you think happens next? Does Labour remove Starmer before he destroys the party completely? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and if this story shocked you as much as it shocked us, share it with everyone who needs to see what's really happening in Westminster right now. The mainstream media won't tell you the full truth, but we will. Tomorrow, we're breaking down the leaked documents that prove Starmer has been planning this attack for months. You won't want to miss it.